Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready to take a bite out of the competition? Are you looking for ideas to make your business better? Welcome to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet,
sponsored by Apple Capital Group.
At the core of every successful business, you'll find people making a difference. And with each episode of the Core Business Show, we talk with those people, examine those ideas, and explore the strategies that make them special. Now, the host of the Core Business Show, Tim Jacquet.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Core Business Show. I'm Tim Jacquet, your host. Today I have the pleasure of having Chris Widener. He is an entrepreneur and also inspirational leader and an author of 12 books. If you'd like to join in conversation, you can join in by posting your question in the chat room or calling into the studios at 347-324-3460, or go ahead and put your question in the email form at info@thecorebusinessshow. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Listeners love to hear personal stories on how entrepreneurs become who they are today. So if you mind, if you can go ahead and share with us how you got started.
Sure. I started speaking right out of college. I had sort of a tumultuous upbringing, 28 homes, 11 different schools, shipped off to live with relatives twice. Got involved in drugs and alcohol at a very early age. It really was going in the wrong direction pretty fast. Got my life turned around late in high school and went to college to work toward a degree in youth and family work to then go back and help at-risk kids like I had been. And so I ended up speaking to high schools, summer camps, colleges, youth groups, that kind of thing. And then over the course of the last 25 years, it's really evolved. Jim is famous for having given Tony Robbins his start. And I co-hosted a television show with probably the greatest motivational speaker of all time, Zig Ziglar. And so it's
Well, what a story. When you look at people like Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins, what makes their talents just stand out versus the ordinary business leader?
Well, I think there's an interesting thing about people who become successful. Like obviously, in the long run, the best doctor or the best chef or whatever, I think sometimes 8 steps in, sometimes they have serendipitous moments. Sometimes they pursue it and they look to get into a channel that'll make them famous. But I don't necessarily know that looking at famous people and thinking that they're better than us is the correct way. In fact, I certainly don't think that's the fact. But those two particular names that you mentioned, Zig and Tony, they're obviously very good at what they do.
Do you think it's something a person is born with or talent? Some people given a certain skill become who they are or good in a particular thing versus someone has to work at it?
I think that there's times people just have a natural gift for it.
Wow. We're going to take a station break real quick, and we're going to kind of dive into a couple of your books. We'll be back in a moment with Chris Widener. You listen to The Core Business Show. I'm Tim Jacquet, your host.
You're listening to the Core Business Show, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. Apple Capital Group in Jacksonville, Florida, is a commercial lender that specializes in asset-based loans, equipment leasing and financing, invoice financing, commercial real estate loans, and asset-based financing in the U.S. and Canada. Apple Capital Group is a direct lender that lends on their private equity investment portfolio. 90% of most loans are decided within 2 hours, and vendor funding within 24 hours after documents are completed, with a one-page application. No slow no's, just a quick decision and a fast yes. To get more information about lending from Apple Capital Group, call 866-611-7457. That's 866-611-7457 to speak with one of our loan specialists. Or visit us right now at applecapitalgroup.com. Welcome back to the Core. Once again, here's Tim Jacquet.
Our guest is Chris Widener. He is author of Leadership Rules. Talk about leadership, if you don't mind. What makes a great leader? And we'll segue into your book.
What makes a great leader?
What makes a great leader? What's the characteristics of a great leader in your opinion?
Well, I think the simplest definition of a great leader is someone who has lots of people following him. I mean, ultimately, if you think you're a great leader, nobody's following you, you're, as John Maxwell would say, you're just taking a long walk by yourself. So that's the first one. But then, of course, there are lots of bad people who have lots of people who follow them. So you could probably break that down to things, great and leader. So you can be a leader, you can be a leader and have, like Jim Jones took almost 1,000 people to their deaths in Guyana. You can be a terrible, horrific leader like Hitler and cause atrocities all across the world, and people follow you. That doesn't make you great by any means. A great leader are people who rise up and who lead people to greatness, to good things, to a positive end that benefits not only the leader, but more importantly, the masses and the whole. And so I think first and foremost, that's the first thing we need to define. What is a great leader? There's lots of things that make a great leader, but one of the things I teach in my courses, my speeches, most people say, they'll come to a seminar and they'll say, I want to be a great leader. Tell me what to do. Now that's interesting.
Wow.
Because there are things that you need to do to become a great leader. But what I teach people is far more important than the request that I tell you what to do is for you to come and say, I want to be a great leader. Tell me what to be. Because it is far more important to look at the character of a leader than it is the skills of a leader. And I think both are important, character and skill. But when you look at it, I do this interactive thing with the people in my audiences where I ask them to write down words that describe a leader. I've done this with 1,000 audiences ranging in size from 10 people to 20,000 people. And what's interesting to me is that every single time I've ever done it, to a ratio of 7 to 3, when they write down 10 words, people come up with character traits instead of skills. And so the skills that you have to master as a leader are relatively few. The character traits that you have to develop are far greater. And interestingly enough, we see it all the time. We see highly skilled leaders who know what to do, and they rise up really fast. They build a big business, or they build a big religious institution, or they rise up the ranks in politics, and eventually they're done by a lack of character. And eventually we see them for what they really and truly are. And it doesn't matter how they are at doing things. When we realize that they're not being the kind of people that represent great leaders, they lose their ability to lead.
Well, in your leadership rules book, you highlight, I think, 4 things. Can you talk about a couple of things in a particular book?
Yeah, sure. There's 4 rules, leadership rules. You get what you expect, you get what you model, you get what you reward, and you get what you work for.
Wow, that's powerful.
So the first thing is as a leader, you get what you expect from the people who follow you. And you need to communicate those expectations. So it's not just what you expect in your brain somewhere. It's when you tell people this is what we expect. When you work here, this is what we expect. And that ranges from the way that we talk to one another, to the time that we arrive, to the time that we leave, to the amount of phone calls, sales calls we make. The leader sets the expectation. The second one is really the powerful one on whether or not the first one works, and that is what you model. So if you tell your team, we expect everyone to be treated with and respect in our office, and then you berate people every time they make a mistake, you're not modeling that, and thus what happens is people say, well, we don't really expect that. They might say it consciously, but they're for certain going to say it subconsciously. They're gonna think, well, that's not really the expectation. Otherwise he wouldn't berate people when he gets mad at them. Remember when I don't know if you have kids or not, but when you hear it all the time, a kid will say to their parent, why should I do it? You don't. And it's like, oh, stab in the heart, because we tell our kids we expect something from them, but if we don't do it ourselves, if we model it, then they find it hard to believe it's actually and realistically an expectation.
Wow. Also, within the particular book, you have another book before this one as well, The Art of Influence. What are the particular skills in kind of within this set of The Art of Influence?
Well, The Art of Influence is actually not about the skills.
Okay.
As I was mentioning earlier, it's about character traits.
Okay.
And it's based on 4 primary character traits. These are things people can begin to work on inside themselves immediately. And the 4 traits that I believe define a great leader, the first being integrity. It's impossible to be a long-term leader without integrity. But what happens is when people find out, then they quit following you. Because ultimately, the relationship between a leader and a follower is more trust. Followers have to trust a leader. And if you don't have integrity, if you're not living a life that demonstrates what you say you believe in, then people don't have trust. And as soon as trust is broken, trust isn't an either on or off switch. It's more of a linear number. You can lose a little bit of trust, or you can lose all the trust. But as soon as people tend to lose trust, you lose your ability to influence them. And that's really all leadership is influencing, changing people's thoughts, beliefs, and actions. So as a leader, that's our goal, change people's thoughts, beliefs, and actions.
Okay.
And if we are not living a life of integrity and people find out about it, then that's what causes us problems. The second one is being an optimistic person, a positive attitude. Very rarely, in fact, off the top of my head, I can't think of one, find a great leader who was a pessimist or a grumpy pessimist. They're optimistic leaders who believe that the future can be better. Doesn't mean that they're not realistic. Doesn't mean that they don't understand the problems that we have or can't make a legitimate assessment of the issues that we face. But it does mean that in spite of where we are, they know how to get to someplace better, and they're optimistic about it, and they're able to communicate that. The third one goes back to what I said before, and that is we're servant leaders. We serve other people. We consider others' interests more important than our own, and a leader that does that will gain loyalty from people. And if people know that we're looking out for them, not just for ourselves, and then they will definitely be more and more loyal to us. And then the last one is excellence, our own personal standards of excellence. And excellence can show itself from skills, but ultimately excellence is a character trait. You're either committed to excellence and have the diligence to pursue it, or you don't. So excellence, while it demonstrates itself through action, it actually first and foremost starts internally as a commitment to becoming better.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's well said. In closing, what you would like to leave us with regarding the two books, and also we'll talk a little bit more about your company?
Well, the biggest thing that I like to leave with people is that no matter where you are, wherever you are today, based on the choices you've made up until now. Everybody faces obstacles, so you can't blame the obstacles. Everybody has faced troubles. Everybody has hardships. So even the great people have had to overcome. So don't make excuses as to where you are right now. Fully embrace responsibility that you are where you are right now based on your own choices. And as soon as you come to that place where you can say, I am because I've chosen to be here, it frees you up with the most powerful idea that if it's true that you are today who you are because of your choices, then it's also true that whatever you want to become, you can become simply by changing your choices. If you want to become a greater leader, you can change your choices and you'll become a greater leader. If you want to become wealthier, you can change your choices and begin to take new actions and become wealthier. If you want to have a better marriage, you can make different choices and improve your marriage. So it really is important for us to embrace responsibility for who we are. And when we do that, it opens up the world in front of us because we understand that we make the life that we want it to be.
Well, your particular company, can you talk about, I know you've written 12 books and you speak throughout the nation. Can you tell us about your personal development services and leadership type services?
Yeah, absolutely. I do coaching, executive coaching, and people contact me at chriswidener.com, CHRISWIDENER.com. And I work with executives of small and medium-sized businesses on both personal and professional development. And I give speeches, as I mentioned before, all around the world. And I have some coaching sites, which we're actually just about to launch. And then I do a little bit of political consulting. I help politicians craft their message and make a better message to communicate more effectively with people. And I like to get my hands involved in a lot of things, but it all sort of revolves around growing personally and growing professionally.
Perfect. And also your books all 12 of them are available through your website and also Amazon?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Chris, thank you for coming on to the program. Really appreciate all your words of inspiration and advice. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, and just to recap real quick, your website address is?
www.chriswidener.com. Widener spelled Widener.
Well, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Again, it's been another production of the Core Business Show. I'm Tim J.K., your host. Thank you for listening, and you can download this episode on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio. Everybody, have a great day. Take care. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. For a free quote on equipment leasing and financing, visit our website, applecapitalgroup.com. That's applecapitalgroup.com. And fill out the information to receive your free quote. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. And remember, you can always get to the core via iTunes. You'll find all our previous episodes there. Thanks again for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet.